the fear of captivity. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into an incredible story from World War II, one that surprised me as much as it'll surprise you. Picture this: you're a German soldier, fighting on the front lines. Bullets are flying, bombs are dropping, and suddenly you're captured. You're now a prisoner of war, a POW, in the hands of the Allies. What's going through your mind? Fear, uncertainty. You've heard stories of brutal prison camps, starvation, maybe worse. That's where our story begins, with the fear of captivity. Imagine being marched away from the battlefield, hands up, surrounded by enemy soldiers. For these German POWs, surrender wasn't just a loss of freedom, it was stepping into the unknown. Many had been told by their own commanders that the Allies would show no mercy. Propaganda painted a grim picture: harsh labor, tiny cells, barely enough food to survive. Some even feared execution. These men weren't just soldiers, they were sons, fathers, brothers, wondering if they'd ever see home again. Take Hans, a young German infantryman captured in North Africa in 1943. He later wrote about his capture, saying his heart sank as he was loaded onto a truck, expecting a life of misery. Like Hans, thousands of German POWs, over 400,000 sent to camps in the US alone, braced for the worst. They'd seen war's horrors firsthand and expected captivity to be another kind of hell. But here's the twist: what they found wasn't what they expected at all. Instead of punishment, many walked into camps with libraries, classrooms, even sports fields. How did this happen? Why would the Allies treat their enemies this way? We'll get there, but first let's set the stage. This fear of captivity shaped everything these men felt as they stepped into their new reality. Stick with me, because the story only gets more surprising from here. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture of World War II and why these POWs ended up in such unexpected places. World War II and the POW crisis. All right, folks, let's take a step back to understand the world these German POWs were living in. It's the early 1940s, and World War II is raging. Europe's a battleground, with millions fighting across continents. By 1943, the Allies, think the US, Britain and their partners, are capturing thousands of German soldiers in places like North Africa, Italy, and France. This created a big problem. What do you do with all these prisoners? The numbers were staggering. By the war's end, the Allies held over 11 million POWs, including millions of Germans. Camps in Europe were overflowing, and moving prisoners across the Atlantic to places like the US or Canada became a solution. The US alone built over 600 camps to house nearly 500,000 German POWs. That's like filling a small city. But here's the catch: these weren't just cages to lock people away. The Allies had to figure out how to manage these men humanely, under international rules like the Geneva Convention. The Geneva Convention, signed in 1929, said POWs should be treated with respect, no torture, no starvation, decent living conditions. Sounds simple, but in the middle of a brutal war, it wasn't easy. The Allies were stretched thin, feeding their own troops and civilians, yet they had to provide for enemy prisoners too. Some folks back then grumbled, why treat the enemy kindly when they're fighting us? But leaders knew following these rules wasn't just about morals. It also meant their own captured soldiers might get better treatment in German camps. This POW crisis forced the Allies to get creative. They didn't just want to warehouse these men. They wanted to keep them busy, maybe even change their perspectives. That's where ideas like libraries and sports fields came in. Yes, really. But why go that far? What was the plan? We'll dive into the camps themselves next, where these German POWs found something they never expected. Inside the camps, first impressions. Welcome back, friends. So our German POWs, hearts pounding, are shipped off to Allied camps, expecting the worst, maybe cold cells or backbreaking labor. But when they arrive, what do they see? Let's step into these camps and explore their first impressions. Picture a place like Camp Aliceville in Alabama, one of hundreds of US camps in the 1940s. The gates open, and instead of grim dungeons, these men see barracks, open fields, even a mess hall that smells like real food. For many, it's a shock. Take Fritz, a Luftwaffe pilot captured in 1943. He later said he expected a cage but found a camp that looked like a small town. The barracks weren't fancy, but they were clean, with bunks, blankets, and heat. The food, not gourmet, but it was hot. Think beans, bread, sometimes even meat. Compared to the war-torn front lines, this was a world apart. The Geneva Convention promised decent treatment, and the Allies, especially in the US, took it seriously. These camps weren't just about shelter. They were organized, almost like communities, POWs got clothing, medical care, and even a small allowance for things like soap or cigarettes. Guards were firm but not cruel. For many prisoners, the biggest surprise was the space. Acres of land with room to move, not just a cramped cell. Some camps, like those in Texas or Oklahoma, had gardens where POWs could grow vegetables. Others had workshops or classrooms. But it wasn't all rosy. Some POWs, especially die-hard Nazis, were suspicious. Was this a trick? Were the Allies softening them up for something worse? Others, exhausted by war, felt a strange relief. They were safe, fed, and alive. These first impressions set the stage for what came next, something even more unexpected. What could top decent food and a bed? How about libraries and sports fields? Stick around, because we're about to see what really blew their minds. Libraries for learning. An unexpected haven. Hey folks, let's dive into one of the biggest surprises for these German POWs. Libraries. Yes, you heard that right. Libraries in POW camps. These men, expecting punishment, found shelves full of books instead. Let's talk about how this happened and why it mattered. In camps across the US, like Camp Stark in New Hampshire, the Allies set up small libraries stocked with books, novels, history, science, even English lessons. Some were donated by locals. Others came from organizations like the Red Cross. Imagine Karl, a mechanic from Berlin, walking into a room with hundreds of books. He'd been bracing for hard labor, but now he's flipping through Mark Twain or learning about American democracy. For many POWs, this was their first real look at the world beyond Nazi propaganda. Why libraries? The Allies had a plan. Keeping prisoners busy reduced trouble, fights, escapes, you name it. But it was more than that. Some leaders believed education could change minds. They wanted these men to question what they'd been taught in Germany. Books on history or philosophy. Even newspapers showed a different side of the world. In some camps, POWs could take classes, math, languages, even art. Teachers were often fellow prisoners with skills, or sometimes local volunteers. For men like Karl, these libraries were a lifeline. War had left them restless, homesick, or angry. Reading gave them a way to escape, to think, to grow. Some wrote poems or started camp newspapers. Others studied English, hoping it'd help after the war. It wasn't perfect. Hardline Nazis sometimes mocked the soft treatment, but for most it was a gift they never expected. These libraries weren't just rooms with books. They were a bridge to new ideas and hope. How did sports fit into this? Sports fields and camaraderie. All right, folks, let's step outside those barracks and onto the sports fields. Another jaw-dropping surprise for our German POWs. These guys thought they'd be breaking rocks, but instead they're kicking soccer balls. Let's explore how sports became a big part of life in these camps. Picture Camp Clinton in Mississippi. Wide open fields, goals set up, and POWs playing soccer, or as they called it, fussball. Some camps even had baseball diamonds or volleyball courts. For many prisoners, this was unreal. Take Otto, a young soldier from Munich. He loved soccer but hadn't played since the war started. Now, in a US camp, he's out there scoring goals with his buddies. Sports weren't just for fun. They built teamwork and kept the men fit. The Allies supplied equipment, balls, nets, even basic uniforms. Sometimes, POWs played against each other, forming teams within the camp. In rare cases, they even faced local teams, though under tight guard. Why sports? The Allies knew idle hands caused trouble. Games kept the prisoners busy and boosted morale. It was hard to stay angry when you're chasing a ball with friends. For many, it brought back memories of home, kicking a ball around with brothers or neighbors. It also broke down barriers. Even guards sometimes cheered during a good match. Otto later said those games made him feel human again, not just a prisoner. It wasn't all perfect. Some POWs didn't trust the setup, thinking it was a trick. Others, too worn out or bitter, sat it out. But for most, sports were a bright spot. They organized tournaments, kept score, even argued over rules like old times. These fields weren't just patches of grass. They were places where men found laughter and friendship in the middle of war. What kind of people made this possible? The people behind the programs. Hey friends, let's talk about the people who made these libraries and sports fields happen. Our German POWs found books and soccer balls, but who thought to put them there? It wasn't just chance. It took folks with vision to turn POW camps into something more than prisons. Let's meet the people behind these programs. First, there were the Allied officers running the camps, especially in the US. Take Colonel James Gee at Camp Ruston, Louisiana. He believed treating POWs well wasn't just about rules like the Geneva Convention. It could change hearts. Officers like him worked with groups like the Red Cross and YMCA to bring in books, sports gear, even musical instruments. These organizations donated supplies and sent volunteers to teach classes or referee games. Then, there were the prisoners themselves. Many had skills they shared, like Wilhelm, a former school teacher in a Texas camp, who taught English to his fellow POWs, or Heinrich, an artist, who led drawing classes. These men turned camps into communities, organizing book clubs or soccer leagues. Some even painted murals or wrote plays performed in the camps. Local civilians played a role too. In small towns near camps, folks donated old books or helped build sports fields. Some volunteered to teach, though they faced backlash. Why help the enemy? But many saw these young Germans as human, not just soldiers. One woman in Oklahoma even brought her old piano to a camp for POWs to play. It wasn't always easy. Some officers faced pushback for being too soft. Hardline Nazi prisoners sometimes stirred trouble, rejecting these programs. But the people behind them kept going, believing kindness could make a difference. Their work gave POWs a chance to grow, not just survive. Daily life as a German POW. Welcome back, folks. So we've seen libraries and sports fields, but what was daily life like for German POWs in these camps? Let's walk through a day in their shoes, somewhere like Camp Concordia in Kansas, and see how it felt to live in this surprising world. The day started early. Around 6 a.m., a bugle or bell woke the men. They'd roll out of their bunks, simple but warm, and head to the mess hall. Breakfast wasn't fancy. Oatmeal, bread, maybe some coffee. But it was filling, a far cry from the starvation they feared. After eating, some POWs had chores. Many worked, like picking fruit or helping on nearby farms, earning a small wage, about 80 cents a day. It wasn't forced labor. The Geneva Convention said they couldn't be pushed too hard. By mid-morning, the camp came alive. Some men headed to the library, like our friend Karl, reading novels or studying English. Others joined classes, math, history, even mechanics. Picture a room of grown men, pencils in hand, learning like school kids. For many, it was a chance to dream of life after the war. Lunch was next, maybe soup and potatoes, then free time. That's when the sports fields buzzed. Soccer games were huge, with teams shouting and cheering. Some guys played cards or wrote letters home. Though mail was slow and censored, evenings brought more surprises. Some camps had movie nights, showing old Hollywood films. Others had music, with POWs playing guitars or forming choirs. Lights out came around 10 p.m., but not before debates or stories swapped in the barracks. For men like Otto, these days felt strange, almost normal, but not everyone was happy. Some missed home terribly. Others, loyal to the Nazi cause, kept to themselves. This routine wasn't just about passing time, it gave these men purpose. Why did the Allies go this far? Why this humane approach? Hey folks, let's get to the big question. Why did the Allies treat German POWs with libraries and sports fields instead of harsh punishment? It's World War II, a brutal time. So why go soft on the enemy? Let's dig into the reasons behind this surprising approach, especially in US camps. First, there was the Geneva Convention of 1929. It set clear rules. POWs had to be treated humanely. No torture, no starvation, decent shelter. The Allies, especially the US, took this seriously. They knew the world was watching, and mistreating prisoners could backfire. If they treated German POWs well, it might push Germany to treat captured Allied soldiers better too. It was a kind of unwritten deal. You take care of ours, we'll take care of yours. But it went deeper. The Allies saw a chance to win hearts and minds. Many German soldiers grew up under Nazi propaganda, taught to hate the Allies. By offering books, classes, and sports, the US hoped to show these men a different side of the world. Take Camp Algona in Iowa. They had programs to teach about democracy, hoping some POWs would reject Nazi ideas. It wasn't just kindness, it was strategy. A prisoner who saw the Allies as fair might spread that idea back home after the war. There was also a practical side. Keeping 400,000 POWs busy prevented trouble. Idle men could plot escapes or fight among themselves. Libraries and sports kept them occupied and happy. Happy prisoners meant fewer headaches for camp guards. Plus, locals benefited. POWs worked on farms, helping with labor shortages. Not everyone agreed with this approach. Some Americans thought it was too soft, especially families who'd lost loved ones to the war. But leaders believed it was worth it. Did it work? Impact on POWs and beyond. All right, friends, let's see what these libraries and sports fields did for our German POWs, and how their time in these camps rippled beyond the war. These men expected punishment but got a chance to learn and play. Did it change them? Let's find out. For many POWs, these camps were life-changing. Take Karl, our Berlin mechanic. He studied English in the camp library and later used it to start a business after the war. Others, like Otto, found joy in soccer games, which helped them cope with homesickness. Some prisoners even discovered new passions: painting, writing, or music. In camps like Camp Hearn in Texas, POWs started orchestras or wrote newspapers, finding purpose in tough times. These activities weren't just distractions, they gave men hope and skills for life after captivity. The bigger goal was to change minds. The Allies hoped exposure to books and ideas would weaken Nazi beliefs. It worked for some. Many POWs, especially younger ones, began questioning what they'd been taught. Letters from prisoners show they were surprised by American kindness. Things like fair treatment or a guard sharing a cigarette. Some later said this shaped their views of the world, making them less hostile when they returned to Germany. But it wasn't universal. Hardline Nazis in the camps often resisted, sticking to their beliefs. Still, the impact went beyond the prisoners. After the war, some POWs returned to Germany and shared stories of humane treatment, which helped rebuild trust between nations. In the US, locals who interacted with POWs, like farmers they worked for, saw them as human, not just the enemy. Legacy of compassion in wartime. Hey folks, we've reached the end of our story, and what a journey it's been. German POWs expected harsh punishment, but found libraries, sports fields, and kindness in Allied camps. So what's the lasting legacy of this compassion during World War II? Let's wrap it up. First, these camps showed humanity in the middle of war's cruelty. Over 400,000 German POWs in the US lived in conditions far better than they feared, thanks to the Geneva Convention and Allied efforts. This wasn't just about following rules, it set a standard. Treating enemies with respect showed the world that even in war, decency matters. It also helped on the other side. Many Allied soldiers captured by Germany were treated better because of this mutual respect. The impact on the POWs themselves was huge. Men like Karl and Otto returned to Germany with new skills, English, trades, even art, that helped them rebuild their lives in a broken country. Some became advocates for peace, sharing stories of fair treatment that challenged Nazi propaganda. These experiences planted seeds for reconciliation, helping Germany and the Allies move toward friendship after the war. Locally, these camps left a mark too. Small towns near camps like Aliceville, Alabama, saw economic boosts from POW labor. Some Americans, initially skeptical, grew to see these prisoners as people, not just enemies, that human connection mattered. Today, some camps are museums, like Camp Algona's, preserving this unique history. This story reminds us that even in the darkest times, kindness can shine through. It wasn't perfect. Some POWs stayed loyal to hateful ideas, but for many, it was a turning point. Thanks for joining me on this incredible journey. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know what other double Y stories you want to hear.